Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. I'm Dr. Laura, and I'm really excited to be here today with Nick Jonsson, a fellow keynote speaker, a best-selling author, and who, like me, is really focused on helping people achieve holistic success in their work and their lives. So he crosses that boundary between work and life to help people thrive in both. And I was really drawn to his powerful story and his authenticity. His book, Executive Loneliness, The 5 Pathways to Overcoming Isolation, Stress, Anxiety, and Depression in the Modern Business World, seemed so timely for the times that we're in. And I think that a lot of leaders, senior leaders, executives, but leaders at all levels really can struggle with tremendous pressure these days. There's so much loaded onto leaders, yet they cannot necessarily share their pain, their challenges, because they have to keep it in. They have to look strong and brave, and they get paid a lot. But at what cost? So although we're going to talk about leaders in this episode, Nick's stories and learnings can be really inspirational to people at all levels of organizations. I'm going to share a couple more things about Nick as we go on, but I'm going to just welcome you to the show, Nick.
Thank you so much, Laura. It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. So can you tell us where you are right now, Nick?
I'm in Singapore today, but otherwise I'm based in Southeast Asia, where I'm traveling around the countries here, working with clients normally around connection in the workplace.
Fantastic. And I would love to get myself there. I've never been, but what's it like in Singapore today?
Today it's early morning at 6 a.m. I'm an early riser. I'm normally up exercising, so this is my good time of the day. And it's 27 degrees Celsius. So yeah, it's a pretty warm day. How much is that in Fahrenheit? Close to 100, is it?
Yeah, that does seem, very nice and hot. I'm very jealous as I look at the snowy weather we're having here in Canada. So you are also a TEDx speaker, you're a master coach, so a master certified coach, and you're an Ironman top 2% world athlete. So tell us about these things. Like, what are the things you're spending the most time doing? A little more about yourself.
Yeah, so the sport in itself, if we start with that, that's to live that balanced life. I use the Ironman sport, so it's triathlon training, which is swimming, cycling, and running. That's for my exercise, but also taking my buckets of meditation, getting out in the forest, in the nature, swimming in the ocean. And also I'm getting my social health through that because I belong to then swim academies, run squads, and also triathlon groups. And we travel together and do races and so on. So I do that to look after myself. Being an introvert, I have to make sure that I go out there and I get my social health ticked. So that's on the Ironman sport. And as for my work, otherwise, I do coaching of individuals, but also training and workshops and so on the whole holistic health. So all the both mental, physical, social health and so on with organizations around Southeast Asia.
I love how it is holistic, right? It's not just the performance of the organization and the productivity of the person, it's their overall health and well-being, which leads me to your story, Nick, and how you have been through adversity and hitting rock bottom with addiction. And when we talked earlier, I told you how one of my dear friends died of suicide from her addiction. And I want to hear a bit more about your rock bottom, what that looked like and felt like, and how you now are an authentic contributor and coach to so many people.
Yeah, so leading up to 2018, when I hit rock bottom, around 2015, I started to struggle. At that time, I was driving a medical organization, leading big teams and so on in Indonesia. And yeah, there was a lot of pressure. I was delivering, but behind the scene, I was losing my confidence. I started to have doubts and I started to make some mistakes. And I was so scared of being exposed at the time that I figured that it's better I resign from the job rather than being exposed for the mistakes I did. So I didn't talk to anyone about it. And it's that isolation, that loneliness that I didn't talk to anyone about it. And I can remember that I was given a mentor, someone who was a lovely man who was 10 years ahead of me in the organization. And I used my mentoring meetings with him to impress him instead, trying to make myself look good so I would be up for the next promotion and pay rise and bonuses, as opposed to exposing myself and being open and vulnerable and telling him the challenges I had. So that really led me then to going down in a spiral that eventually brought me to my knees.
Oh gosh, that must have been so hard. So hard to keep that all inside.
Yeah, I think so. Being a high achiever, I was not used to being vulnerable. Perhaps the companies I worked with, the leaders I had, I never saw them weren't vulnerable. So who was I as an upcoming leader to go start opening up and asking for help when that wasn't the culture of organization? I also didn't know that, the world of having coaches and speaking externally or having mastermind groups and peer groups and so on, that had not yet opened up to me. And therefore, I was left in my own mind and my own thoughts. And my ex-wife could listen to me, but she also didn't have the answer. So that was didn't help. So therefore, I didn't have any way to cope with it. And eventually, therefore, alcohol started to be one way to deal with it. After a day's work, I needed to forget things, and I went to the bar to drink and meet some friends. And with that, then I replaced my healthy habits, my healthy diet, and so on, also with fast food and pizza, and alcohol replaced my exercise routine. And it took me a few years, but after 3 years, basically, I have lost my health completely.
Oh my goodness. So what was the physical repercussion? Did you put on a lot of weight? Were you not sleeping well? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I did. I put on about 30 kilos or almost 60 pounds at the time. And a really, really also bad blood work, high cholesterol, hypertension, and all of these things came into play, something that I never had before. And as I was then collecting more and more illnesses, and I was losing touch with things, then my mental health really started to suffer as well. And I didn't know what to do basically. And I started then to jump from job to job, eventually burning through my finances as well. Then became the financial insecurity. So it was just an endless downward spiral and cycle.
Oh, wow. I'm so sorry that you went through all of this. Tell us about what your rock bottom, how you got out of your rock bottom, how you were able to rebuild through the ashes of that rock bottom, Nick.
Yeah, so it was in April 2018, and I can remember being, in a lot of pain. At that time, also, I had a psychosomatic illness. My left foot was swollen like an elephant foot, and I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't diagnosed then. It was only later psychologists diagnosed it as a psychosomatic illness. So basically, uh, it swallowed up so much since I didn't speak to anyone for 3 years about my feelings and how I was feeling. The body had to express itself somehow. But when that happened, I couldn't even put on a shoe, so I had to start seeking for help because I just couldn't even go out. And that's when I start to share uh, first with one person, a woman who I had met who today is my wife. I shared with her how I felt, and that was the beginning uh, of my recovery because then I started to release all that pressure by talking about my feelings for the first time in regards to this for a few years.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm so glad you had that outlet in her to truly open up and be vulnerable about the place you were at, and no longer suffering in silence, which is why I imagine you wrote Executive Loneliness. So tell us more about Executive Loneliness and what that book is all about.
Yeah, so as I was then coming back in recovery, and after I had started to share my story, I got the help I needed. I realized that it was almost like a V-shaped recovery because a problem shared is a problem halved was something that I felt. And for every time I was sharing my story and getting help I needed, I was coming back to life very, very quickly. And I had more motivation, energy, and drive than perhaps, and more positivity than ever in my life. And that's when I started to then understand, that what I gone through, maybe there was more people out there who also suffered from this. And I started to do more research about it. I started to talk to people about it. And Then a year into my recovery, I lost a friend of mine to suicide, a colleague and a friend of mine to suicide. And that's when I doubled down on my research, really, because I then realized that there are a lot of people still suffering out there in the workplace, people who feel lonely, isolated, who don't feel safe enough to speak up about their challenges. And that's in 2019. Then I really doubled down on trying to prevent these suicides, and that we should talk about everything, including suicides in the workplace.
Absolutely. And I imagine the pandemic actually was good timing to get this information out there more widely as people were more isolated physically as well.
Yes, it was. So I started to write a book in 2019, and I had the research done then on loneliness in the workplace prior to the pandemic. The pandemic happened as I was writing in middle of my book 2020, and I could see then in the I get statistics, and basically if when I started to write my book before the pandemic, 30% of the executives in Singapore were suffering from loneliness. During the pandemic in 2020, it was 59% of them, so about double.
Okay. Wow. Wow. And then where are we at now? Now that a lot of people are back in workplaces at least some of the time, where are we at with the loneliness factor?
Yeah, the latest I've seen is about 33%. So we are back, and I believe that the pandemic normalized these conversations. So it's done some benefit, but what is happening today, and I think what many are suffering from in the workplace is also the uncertainty. There's so much disruptions, there's so much mergers, acquisition. They see so many of their friends being laid off that there's still a lot of anxiety and loneliness, and also people are fighting for the job. So therefore, people are scared to speak up and be vulnerable, because if there's less jobs there, they want to be seen as the winner, as the strong one. So therefore, the numbers are back to sadly where we were more or less before the pandemic.
Ah, that's really, really sad. And that's what I'm seeing too, in North America for sure. There's a lot, you can be in an office every day and still be very lonely and suffering and struggling mentally. And I'm seeing record levels of fear right now and uncertainty, and trying to use my platform as much as I can to raise awareness as well and to open these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that everywhere, and I think it's something about the work culture and how we all grow up, and that we sort of rely on that one job to really give us everything, and we work for 30 years for the company. That's no longer the case. And if what I've done in my little organization, I have 20 employees, I've told everyone that no one is allowed to work 100% for me, because we never know if my business will be around in the next few years. So what we do instead is we're helping each other to encourage them to work on their own startups, their own companies, and taking other jobs, part-time jobs, to diversify themselves and really to chase sort of their passion and the purpose in life and what they want to do as well, so that they don't rely on just one job and define themselves in one job, because that's what I did, and that was so painful when I lost that.
No kidding. And we call that portfolio careers. So having a portfolio of different roles and gigs you're doing, which plays into that term, the gig economy, right? So we're no longer putting control of our career into one corporation or enterprise.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm encouraging in my company, and we have had a lot of talks in my community about this and sharing best practice on portfolio careers. And so yeah, fully aligned.
Wonderful. I knew we were so aligned. I even named my oldest son Nick, even though I didn't know you at that time, 19 years ago.
Wonderful. You have to talk more about.
Nicholas, a good solid name, right? Nicholas when you're in trouble, and then Nick when you grow up,
Yeah.
right? I've had a couple of episodes lately on women's careers and the hurdles of that women face with the glass ceiling, which still exists in some contexts, and imposter syndrome and stuff. But men also have unique struggles around the definition of masculinity and what's expected of them. And that's why I did an episode with Heads Up, the professor who founded Heads Up Guys, which started Canada, but is a global platform for men now. So that was a really powerful episode for me just to learn more. But I'd like to hear your perspective, Nick, on how we can better support men and men's mental health in the workplace today.
Yeah, we all need safe spaces. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. And I think we also have our unique challenges. We need our places. And I think for men, I used to have great male friends, but what we did together was either go and play golf or go to the bar and watch some sport. And we didn't really talk about the big challenges. We were not vulnerable. We didn't go deep. Um, so it's about creating that structure, and we need some leader, perhaps a coach or a therapist or someone who can actually take the charge and set an agenda so that we have more vulnerable, more deeper conversations. So that I believe is essential. And these groups exist all around the world. There was not much of them in Southeast Asia where I were. The most of the men's group were related to recovery groups and so on, the 12-step programs. But what I've done myself in the last years is I've said that you shouldn't have to be an addict and fall into a 12-step recovery program to have a safe space where you can talk. So I'm now running a men's group myself. And in fact, we are meeting tonight, and on the agenda is to discuss fatherhood for 1 hour.
Ah, that's fantastic. Fantastic. Because we have, we have more groups around women right now than we do men. And I think women really need those groups, and me included. It's been important to be part of those communities, but to have groups for men to be able to open up and show vulnerability and share the struggles of being a man in today's really challenging world. Super important.
Yeah, very much so. And what I'm hearing from many of the men is that the big challenges they have on the shoulders, many times they haven't had the courage to even discuss it with their wife at home, and they're keeping secret for so long until, like how I did, until it becomes something that is starting with something small, and then it's ending up with something that is huge, or maybe the relationship ends because it's just the real issue is never discussed. But then having a safe, confidential space encourage them to start discussing this, and at least they get the courage to speak about it, and then they can discuss it with a partner and so on and find solutions rather than keeping the lid on and just holding it in, which has been for so many men the norm otherwise if they don't have this safe space.
And that's why I think men have higher suicide rates. I don't know what the difference is these days in suicide rates between men and women. Do you have a sense globally?
Yeah, so there's numbers around the world, and I think just in general it's much higher, but it's probably around 3 to 1 is kind of numbers that I'm seeing. 3 men to 1 woman is in some general numbers that I've seen roughly.
And I think it's that they suffer in silence and they can fake it. They can go watch the football game or watch hockey if you're up here in Canada or whatever you do, and just chitter chatter about surface level and not going deep into the pain and challenges of being a human in this earth these days.
Absolutely, and I think, I mean, it's uncomfortable to be vulnerable, but we can practice that. And I talk a lot about the vulnerability muscle, and that it's like going to the gym, we train our muscles. We need to do that with vulnerability as well, and it's about starting small. And I then was fortunate that I had a drinking problem because that brought me to the 12-step programs. And over the years now, I've been to almost 1,000 of these meetings. Perhaps the first 100 I needed help. The rest 900 was for me to give back and help others. And but that has kept me on this path of being vulnerable, keep sharing my challenges, and no matter what is on my mind, I will come in there and I will share what the challenge is, and I will leave the meeting feeling better. So we all need those safe spaces, and we just have to be proactive in looking something up where we can practice that.
And you're right. Places like AA, they've nailed that. The community support, the vulnerability. But why do you have to suffer from an addiction to get that support and be vulnerable with a group of fellow humans?
Yeah, absolutely. And we need this in a business setting as well. And I'm running peer groups in Singapore, Jakarta, and Kuala Lumpur, where we group people based on their industry. We have groups also for entrepreneurs because they have their unique challenges. We have groups for HR leaders, finance leaders. We have sustainability leaders, and so on. So that you are in a basically in a group which is your tribe, where you have your unique challenges, you can discuss them, you feel understood, and you can help each other. We also ensure that there's no competitors in the same group, so that you should feel that it's safe, and yes, they are confidential.
Okay. Beautiful. So that's one of your recommendations for overcoming executive loneliness and loneliness as a leader. Can you name another one of your tools or suggestions in the book?
Yeah, we need to basically find safe spaces outside our work, because we perhaps cannot come in and overshare everything in the office. Then perhaps people will judge us, and there's something in there. We need to find perhaps the one or two people who we feel we can trust inside the workplace. But then it's about externally finding safe spaces. And the groups are so mastermind groups, peer groups, but also trying to find some mentors, perhaps some people who are uh, 10 years ahead of you in your field, perhaps some people you worked with in the past, old bosses and so on, who you respect. Reach out to them and ask them, do you mind if we can have a conversation once a month or once a quarter, and then create a list on the people that on the issues that are on your mind, and take the opportunity to reach out to these people. And so we can build up that safety network for ourselves around us. And that is something that I'm coaching CEOs. I'm coaching one gentleman who is the CEO of the biggest logistics company in Asia. And that's a huge role with a lot of different countries, legislations, and so on. And one of the things we did for him was really to look at each market, who would be the people with the most knowledge in each market, and for him to reach out to them and build up this safety network, so he knows that if it's a problem about the Philippines, then these are the 2 3 people I should call. So you rather have conversations rather than going to bed with these issues.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Different folks for different purposes when you need support. And I think people who have retired too, I think there's a win-win scenario because they're retired, but they still have lots of wisdom to give back, and it can be so isolating when you retire. And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing people not retire these days. They're hanging on well into their 70s even, we're seeing in North America. Are you seeing the same in Asia?
Yes, absolutely, because there's no pension if you haven't really still saved up or built anything yourself. So you have to continue working, and so your mentoring is fantastic. And then, of course, you can give half an hour as a mentor to a person. But if they really like what you do, you might be hired as a consultant and do a project which is keeping you excited, right? If you're at the end of your career, so it works both ways.
Absolutely. So I know that you've learned a lot in your own journey about resilience and reducing stress and coming back from failure and rejection. So I know a lot of people struggle with that. It's a fiercely competitive world. There's lots of rejection, whether you're in school and you're competing on that front, or you're in the workplace and you're competing for limited positions. So tell us, a couple of strategies for dealing with failure and rejection and bouncing back.
Yeah, I believe it's about creating that culture, and we are responsible for that as a leader. It doesn't matter if you are a mother, a father, a teacher, or if you are a business leader. We can create this safe culture in our organization, our family. The way I done it in my company is created a fail fast culture, where we see things more as experiments in games and fun, and that if something goes wrong, we are encouraged and welcome to share what we learn from it as soon as possible. We have also set up the budget, so a percentage of our budgets are for explorations, so that we can try new things and see what works and what doesn't work. And if we, for example, use a new vendor, we don't have too high expectations on anybody. We see it more as an experiment to see what can we learn from this, and what are the mistakes we can make, so we don't have to continue with them. So if we can make that culture, and that the top leader then are not blaming people when things go wrong, then we will see that people start to feel safer. And in my little company, it's only 20 people, but we have that culture, and no one is blaming each other. And me as the leader also, I'm quite transparent with results. I'm quite open to say, we had a good month or we had a bad month, and if it was a bad month, what was it? And then let's brainstorm together, and rather than blaming each other, let's just look at it as for what it was.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that creates psychological safety and avoids the blame game, I call it, where you're fearful of making a mistake.
Yes, absolutely. And it is challenging though, because it is quite tough out there in Asia now. Also, it's quite competitive, and we see more and more layoffs. So people are naturally scared. But that it doesn't therefore help if we are blaming each other. We need to support each other as much as we can, and just having conversations about it.
Yes, absolutely. So let's just talk about the uncertain times we're in. So there's lots of fear going on in the media. There's lots of polarization, geopolitical polarization. I'm curious, any advice to get through these tough times in particular? So whether it's at work or in life, how can we better navigate these challenging times?
Yeah, I believe the most important in this is to not spend too much digesting the social media and watching the mainstream news, unless that's really our job. If we are working in politics, sure, watch it. But if your job is not in politics, then perhaps it doesn't serve you well. So I'd say zoom out from it and don't get too emotionally involved, because that can clearly observe it can really take too much of your energy otherwise, and focus on what you can control. So your family, yourself, look after yourself, exercise, get out in the nature, and perhaps join some charity or some organization where you can give back and do something meaningful. I think get back to the basics rather than be absorbed in all this political drama that is happening all around the world. And still, if you have some strong views and you want to be of help, then there are charities related to the most causes we want, and we can donate something to that and trust that those organizations are doing the good job with it. That's basically my mentality, at least.
Yeah, I think getting involved in charities, that's one of the top ways to help our mental health. And I think it's because we're helping others who have less than us and more needs than us. And whether it's children who are vulnerable, whether it's animals who are vulnerable, whatever it is, we realize that, hey, they have it worse than us, right? These stray dogs, or if you're working at the animal shelter, or with children who can't afford lunches, or the food banks, like you're going to realize that, wow, as many struggles as I have in my work life, these people have it worse, and I can make a difference.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a big part of any recovery program, right? You come in there and you're getting your help, and the 12 step of every 12 step program is to give it back. And so it just goes in a full circle. And that's where I learned it's about being useful, and it's really making us feel good as well. So that, I think, can help us. And again, we are not putting all bets on the job. Then we have more things that are important in our life. We spread ourselves a little bit thinner and not putting all bets on one horse, which we are doing. If all we do, we go to the work every day, and then all we do is watching the news, following the drama that is unfolding, which is outside of our control. To get to focus on the things that you can control, and try to really map out what these things are and schedule it. And I'm a big believer on putting it in the schedule and the calendar, not only the work, but also the things that we need to do to look after ourselves. And uh, at some training teams and workplaces now, it's really about that holistic view. It's not just the professional responsibility you bring to the world, to your work. You bring also your physical health, you bring your mental health. And if that's all aligned and you're well, then naturally your performance going to be better all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And to do your Ironman, let's go back to that. I mean, you would have had to map it out every day, wouldn't you? Just so meticulously to be top 2%. For goodness sakes, that's amazing, Nick.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're competing in the age group, and I'm turning 50 here in a few months. The sport has given me so much, and as I said, it's the social health for me to meet others. It's the physical health to really look after my body, and then of course the diet and everything around it. But it's also the mental health of pushing through then, and it really helps me to become disciplined and so on. And these days, though, I also don't drink alcohol. I stopped that almost 7 years ago, which makes it easier. So yes, it is about 3 hours in average of exercise per day. A little bit more on the weekend. It can be 5, 6, even 7 hours exercise, and then during the days perhaps 1.5 hours or something like that. That means I do something in the morning. I wake up typically, go for a swim or a bike ride in the early morning, and then it's typically a run in the evening. So it really breaks up my day also. And I should say evening, I mean after work, before I have a dinner and before I spend time with family and friends and so on. So it's a really nice break of the day for me, and it just works me to always be at my best and just continue doing it as long as I can is how I feel now.
So when is your next big race?
My next big race is in August, no, sorry, July this year in Luxembourg and Ironman. So it's sort of a bit of off season. So then it's July, August, and then I'm participating in the World Championship in the half Ironman distance in November, which is in Spain this year.
Amazing. Good luck with that. Wow. So, back to these uncertain times, what role do you feel that spirituality plays, and how do you see spirituality making a difference in this mental health crisis that we're in?
Yeah, spirituality is a big one and an important one. And we are introduced to that also in the 12-step programs, right? And what I do like is that we're not talking about religion, because then it can start immediately to become complicated.
Yes,
Uh,
to say the least. Yeah.
Yes. So I do like how the 12-step programs define it. And even though they say the word God, it's a God of your own understanding. And if you refer to that as the universe or the ocean or the air or whatever it is, it's really up to you. So when we define, let people define it for themselves, then we can all come together and discuss it. So I think that's a good one. And spirituality then is all about accepting the things that we are not in control on. So it's about ego deflation in that sense, that we are not the only one running the show. There's more players to it, and we are perhaps not as big as we thought we were. And I think that's very important, especially for someone who perhaps have fallen into addictions or bad habits, or someone that is struggling, is that perhaps too often they're looking at themselves, and sometimes that can not serve us so well, especially when it comes to addiction. So in that sense, spirituality is at the heart of the recovery programs. And again, we shouldn't have to fall into addictions in order to explore spirituality. So yeah, I'm a big fan and love everything around spirituality these days.
Yes, me too. And I feel like spiritual health is something that we're going to be speaking about more. Soul health, right? So I think that it's the area that's been untouched when, especially in the organizational world. But it's under there. You can see once you start talking to people and asking people, a lot of people are open to talking about it and are on various stages of spiritual journeys, especially as we've seen mainstream religions lose some of their following and lose those communities. People are really wanting to find soul purpose and meaning in this challenging world.
Yeah, it makes completely sense. It is a challenging world, and it's hard to figure it all out ourselves. But if we can just understand that we are part of something bigger, and that some of the things are cannot be explained, and that some things are bigger than us, then at least we are getting somewhere. And adding meditation and prayer and so on to our daily routines is something that do marvelous things. I have studied meditation and mindfulness. I'm also a student now. I study towards a master's of psychotherapy and counseling, and spirituality is a big part of this program, where I'm learning all the techniques around this, and I just absolutely love it and absorb the learning.
Beautiful. I love hearing that. Okay, so a question I ask all guests is, what does work life wellness mean to you, and how does it play out in your life?
Work-life balance to me means really that we look at all parts of our life. That is not just the professional responsibilities, but just like a professional athlete don't just show up to a competition and compete. They are training most of the time. And if we see our workplace as the arena where we perform, we cannot be expecting just to show up to perform. We need to prepare for it, and we need to be in a good shape to get in to handle it.
Yeah, and I look at it as work life wellness, being well in your work and well in your life. And I think you do a great job of exemplifying that, Nick.
Thank you, Laura.
And you're in a hotel in Singapore now, but you're calm, you seem grounded, and I bet you're making use of the space you're in, the going in the pool or outdoors, making good use of the time there.
Yeah, I'm heading out for a run after this morning run. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I'll get you off quick then. Two more quick questions. What do you listen to or read for your own growth and development these days that you could recommend to our followers?
Well, I read a lot of the recommendations that come up in my classes, and the latest one was about social health and connection. I can really recommend. I believe it was a Canadian author, a lady who wrote about the social health, which is the big next pillar. Why we understand physical health is important, and COVID put mental health there, and then it's about social connection as well, social health.
We will get the name and we will share it in the show notes.
Yes, let me get that to you after this.
Yeah, and the newsletter, etc. We'll make sure to include that. Do you listen to podcasts very often?
Yes, my favorite is Rich Roll.
Okay, tell us about that.
Yeah, so Rich Roll is American. He was also in recovery as myself. He was a competitive swimmer in the US, and he was out for a big night, falling down the stairs, which ended his professional career. Instead, he became a top lawyer and earning great money, but also he fell into addiction, which crashed his career. And then he rebuilt himself, coming back as a fantastic ultra runner. So very inspirational story. And he has many fascinating guests, and the conversations are very vulnerable.
Wow, that's amazing. We're definitely going to share that too. And then my final question is, what wish do you have for a better world when it comes to these topics of loneliness and mental health at work?
Yeah, I really hope that that we can continue to have more of these great conversations which you are driving here, Laura. That I believe that the more we become comfortable discussing the uncomfortable, the better it will be. So keep up your great job. Thank you for what you're doing.
I'm trying, and I'm trying to be more vulnerable myself. I hurt my foot, so I have to go to physio, so I'm feeling sorry for myself. But I'm going to go to physio while you go on a nice run. And I wish we could trade places, but here we are.
Yeah, I wish you a speedy recovery then.
Thank you. I just got to stay off it and not be my usual self, active self. But not an iron woman, but I like being active. So thank you for your time today, for all your insights, Nick. And I'm really excited to share this episode more widely and help people as they navigate the uncertain times we're in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I hope you stay well. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate and review the episode and share with others who may benefit. Visit me on my website at drlaura.live and sign up for my monthly e-newsletter full of tips and resources. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would be delighted to speak with you on your speaking needs. Stay well.